Hey everybody, welcome to episode 156 of the Bonehead podcast, where we talk all things Blood Bowl. And jingle. Welcome back. I'm Ben, and once again I'm joined by Blood Type Ben. BT, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Sorry, I'm like blown out to hell. I'm like the whitest I've ever appeared, and I'm a pretty white guy, so I'm just actually editing, trying to edit this on the fly.
That second one, that one's better. The blue.
Wait, want it to be blue?
No. Where you changed it off blue to sepia. Yeah.
Okay. Who's gonna have to live with it?
And we're also joined by Trips. Trips, how you doing today?
I'm very good. That I'm not quite as white as Ben, so I must be in a slightly healthier background color.
Well, I mean, with all those lights, the background was bound to be like pretty good. I love the little rainbow ones. I'm not sure I've seen them before, or maybe it's just like a different angle.
Those ones, they used to be over here.
Maybe. Anyway, we are gathered here today to talk about what? Blood Type Ben.
We're talking about hobby productivity. So we have Trips, and he does his own, podcast and show on productivity, and he's big on, improving your work output and things like that. And we really enjoy that, and we value that, and having Trips in the group. So I think it's great to do a whole episode on how we can apply that to this hobby, because I've certainly found it useful.
Yes, especially this year, kind of like we've been talking about this since the beginning of the year. Like, you go into the new year, you set yourself goals, and actually, what are some stuff that we've started doing or are going to be doing or have done in the past that have led to just being able to get more stuff done in the hobby? I think it's just worthwhile to kind of kick off the year and have a chat about it. So yes, that's what we're going to do, but we'll take a quick break. I'll do the audio test recording, and then we'll jump straight into the topic. Wrong. All right, and we're back. We checked the tech, and it all went horribly wrong, but stay tuned to the end of the episode to catch up on that. But yes, we're going to be talking hobby productivity. So Trips has got a productivity podcast and a penchant for productivity. My profession is actually process analysis and optimization. So like my like when I'm being professional about things, I can help identify the easiest and slickest and most efficient ways to do things. The interesting thing about that is, because I do that professionally, when it comes to hobby and stuff, I am way more inclined to just YOLO it. And I've always kind of like overcompensated. Like Ian Warhammer has always sort of said this, is like, it's okay, like starting the project is still doing some of the project, like it's still doing stuff. But getting things done and finished is something I've never really been very good at from a non-professional point of view, because it comes down to these are my deadlines. Like, I don't have anything, so it doesn't matter. So if I could want to move on to the next thing, I'm not holding anything back. So yeah, I figured actually it's January and we'd have a good chat about what we're doing this year. Or I'll tell you what, let's start from a point of we've got Brush Time here, who is a professional hobbyist. I don't know if is that
I guess kind of, a bit of an oxymoron, but yeah.
Is that a disrespectful term? I don't know. Like,
no, I don't think so. I wouldn't put it on my
professional
documents. But...
on my documents, yeah. So Ben, like, for you, obviously you have to paint for a living. Like, what do you find is like, and be as open about this as possible, what's the biggest motivator for you to get stuff done? So we'll talk about what we're doing at the moment and what we've done in the past before we kind of move forward with like how we're going to do things differently, because it's been quite a transition, right, going from being a hobbyist to being a working hobbyist. I don't think I could do it because I don't have that discipline. What's worked well for you?
I talked about this a bit on the Siege podcast, and I guess I can give a slightly different answer, maybe a bit more of an honest answer on this one, which is money.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as something becomes, it's your living, and so you do it to be alive. And like, I mean, I've been pretty bad lately in the last sort of like 6 months or so. It's like a lot of my over promising has really caught up with me, and it's a lesson I've learned a lot about doing this first year of Brush Tide. Is like I really overcommitted to a lot of stuff, and I'm very sorry to people who have still work outstanding. And I have been in touch with everyone, and they're all very understanding. It's very good, and I'm catching up with it all. But yeah, the priority really was the fact that if I don't get stuff done, I can't get more work in, and I can't afford to pay my bills. So that's like the frankly the answer of the motivator. Like there have been times recently, I think I've mentioned it a million times because I'm, I like to talk about it, but I did a job recently which I really had to get done before Christmas, and it was brutal. More work than I've ever done in my entire life. It was the equivalent of 3 months worth of work in 3 weeks worth of work in a week. And but the only reason I had to do that was because if I didn't get it done before Christmas, I wouldn't get paid before Christmas, and I couldn't afford the bills. So it's like that's like it's hard to give that honest answer of just like, oh yeah, no, it's all about like, improving, like self-improvement and all of that, when really the biggest motivator is the fact that, we've all got to live, we've all got to eat.
So I thought it was worth checking in with you because that's the career aspect, and there are unfortunately too few people who I think that gets to be a career for, right? So the rest of us muggles, we don't have that drive to be like, I have to do this so that I can survive. Like, I guess this is why I'm a stronger completer finisher at work, because I have to do that stuff so that I can get the next batch of work to do, right? So that we can pay the mortgage, things like that. So when it comes to like hobby stuff, I mean, trips historically, when it comes to like hobby and things, what have you seen that works for you, if anything?
Well, I sort of split it for me down to three things. With hobby, I find that the three areas I really struggle are the willingness to go, and that's often knowing what I want to do and being able to focus on it. The second one is then actually the ability to go, and that's the pure, do I have to unpack everything to actually start doing everything? And then the third is the ability to not get distracted 3 seconds into starting something. And I find from a hobby point of view, they're my three biggest things that I have to sort of overcome to do anything. And yeah, if you don't want to do it, if it's not your job, you will find something else to do. I think Ben has found the motivation around that one of going, if I make it my life and my living, I will find myself needing to not sleep.
It's probably worth adding, like, I didn't find it difficult before. Like, I'm a firm believer in that everyone has at least one thing which they find is like, I could do this so much. I could do this forever. I feel like you might not know it yet. You might not have found it yet, but I think there is something for everyone where it's just like, this is zen. This clicks. I absolutely love every aspect of doing this, and miniature painting was that for me. So it's like I could do it anyway. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like maybe not 15 hours a day every day.
I mean, you guys know me pretty well. Can you guess what my thing that clicks is? Like Ben just said, it's miniature painting. What is it for
like
me?
filming stuff, filming, like playing with cameras and
interesting
sprinting
spreadsheets.
Oh, right, obviously. But okay, I didn't realize it would be that boring.
Spreadsheets aren't boring; they're amazing. Anyway, that's my jam. Yeah. But you're quite right in that. Trips, the things you pointed out, I think are bang on, and it's not surprising that you, of all of us, the first one to kind of pick on the detractors or the barriers to getting it done. One thing in there, though, that I think we're going to add before we kind of look on how we get better or what we're going to do that's different is deadlines. For Ben's already raised, but for me, the only times realistically I have ever finished a hobby project is when I've got a tournament, normally tomorrow, or when we start filming, normally tomorrow. Like that has historically, as I look around my room of things that are finished, I go, I've got better, but not much. So yeah, I think teams, specifically in Blood Bowl, like teams and stuff like that, they only get finished if there's a reason. And I think that's probably got down to what Tripp said about like distractions, doing something else, doing something different. and also maybe like the bit about why you're doing the hobby. So if there's no actual driver for you finishing that team, like once you've finished painting the first player, like this is something I really struggle with in my whole life. I am a problem solver. So I'll be like, how do I paint a goblin team? Let's get a goblin. Let's paint a goblin. Like, that's how you do it. And then I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that again 15 more times because I've already solved it now. So as I'm looking around my room, I'm like, painted one of that unit. I painted some of that unit. I painted that unit 3 different times. I've printed that unit 9 different times. And it's like that, like it's, for me, I think that's the distraction I have to solve myself is like, cool, I know how to do that now. And then how do I make it so that I go back to it and finish it? Like that's probably one of the things I need to pick up, because otherwise the only reason I ever get anything done is due to a deadline, and it's normally filming.
Yeah.
Which leads to...
It's one of those weird things actually when you mentioned that like goblin thing, because like I would say a test model or like doing something like a test model has real pros and cons with achieving something. Because like if you don't do a test model, you don't have that problem where you finish it and then you feel like you finished something and so you can move on to the next thing. But like if you have like a unit, and that becomes a thing you have to get to completion before you can kind of move on. But then when you do a test model, you kind of overcome all the barriers of what color do I put there, what color do I put there, and it's a lot faster to solve that. And then you can just repeat that. You can just write it down and repeat it, and it becomes a lot easier. And you don't have those mental blocks, which can be quite intimidating and daunting. And you know,
and I think that's the bit for me that I've always historically struggled with is, oh, this is solved now. Like I've always like throughout my entire life, like the repetition of something that I already know how to do is something that, generally speaking, unless there's a higher goal, has no interest to me at all. Trips is nodding a little bit, so I don't know if you're in agreement there.
I was just thinking the hardest thing for me is going from I will play this team in 7s to I need the rest of the team for an 11s. You're like, oh, I've been there, I've done it, I've completed it, I've played with them. I know I need 4 more linemen and the other positional, but they're going to be grey for a long time.
Is that the biggest lie in Blood Bowl? Because I've always held, like, if you want to paint a team, start out, paint a 7s team, play with, if you like the team, then you'll be encouraged to add it. However, I've got a lot of 7s teams. And I don't have that many 11s teams, which is really funny when we're looking at which teams can we use. And I'm like, do you know what, guys? I have every team ever. None of them are ready to go.
yeah.
Is that the
would
biggest
you say that
lie?
that's kind of interesting then? So would you say like your mind works that you prefer solving unsolved problems than repeating something you know?
Anything that is already solved has zero intrinsic value to me. Like,
so you kind of almost don't like being in your comfort zone, like something which is like you know how to do easily. You don't enjoy repeating that.
I just don't see the point. Like this is me this is me bringing it back to like my core inner self. Like obviously there is a point, like, oh, and obviously that is the point, but immediately I'm like, I have that, there's no challenge to that. And I guess it's not even a challenge, it's more just like I want to know how everything works. I don't have to figure it out. I'll read about it and then I'm like, cool, I don't care about that anymore because I now know how that works. Like, and when it comes to painting, I'm starting, like, the last few months has been very, very, very different to me, for me. And I think it's probably in line with the way I've reframed what hobby means for me, for the channel. So like, I've painted some boards, I've painted some terrain, and I've painted it so that it's ready for future use. Whereas historically, I'd be like, there is no point in me painting these squigs because, like, I'm never going to use them. Well, now I've got them and they're ready to go. So that when we've got like a little bit of a library, and I guess that's how I've kind of hacked that part. But generally speaking, yes, if there's no immediate use for it, I'm like, I'll just go do something else, or I will do exploratory design, which I think is probably more fun for me and is actually one of my my hacks for this year as well.
Interesting.
So before we kind of look ahead at what we're doing now, what we're going to start doing, is there anything else that's worked well in the past or worked very poorly in the past? Because I think it'd be worth talking about it if there is, because I imagine that anybody listening here who's tangentially involved in the hobby is going to be like, yeah, I get that. I get that.
I have a massive one. I have a massive thing that's very recent and a discovery.
What we got?
So it's doing more than one thing at a time.
Interesting.
I've been trying that, and it's not been working. And
That's really interesting. Do you mean like having like
yeah,
2 or 3 different projects on the go?
yeah, and jumping between them, trying to do a bit of this, bit of that. Like I've been trying to like do like, okay, I'll do 2 days on that, 3 days on that, or
Yeah.
whatever, and it's not working at all. And I need to go back to this project I do start and I finish. This one I start and I finish, and then you get that much more frequent completion, and that's like the momentum which you need to continue going. Whereas otherwise, you just stretch it out, and you never get that feeling of you finish something, and you might complete everything in a sort of similar time frame. But it's very demotivating to have to be like, okay, none of this is done. I haven't finished anything in like a month, and yeah, that's pretty brutal. So that's what I think one of the biggest contributing factors to my personal feeling of slowdown in the last
So
few months, despite painting more than ever.
when it comes to workforce management, that's called task friction. So if you've got 10 hours, you've got 10 things to do in a day, you've got 10 hours to do them, and they each take an hour, they will take more than 10 hours because you've got the time interspersed between them. Also known as TO time in tournament rounds. As I've misplanned before. I'm like, yeah, rounds take 2 hours, so the next one starts 2 hours later. And we're like, okay, what about the task friction in that? Like, oh yeah, the reset time, we've got to do that. So there's probably an extra factor in that, Ben, especially with you, where you're like, I would say the volume of what you're doing is quite big. Like, and I know what you're like. You'll be using like 30 paints per project probably. And one of the things I've definitely keyed up on is well, Trips is already there, like availability. Like, what's the barrier to me doing this is my paints are in a box under the desk. I'm not gonna lie, and this is a very negative trait, very negative, very wasteful, and don't be like this, but if I'm like, I don't know where Bugman's Glow is, I will just order another one. because it's easier for me than to dig out all the drawers to find the Bugman's Glow that's from Games Workshop, so it's probably just a ball of Play-Doh anyway. I'm like, do you know what?
Yeah, that's true.
3 minutes, I can order it from Entoyment and it'll be here tomorrow anyway. So I just paint tomorrow when it turns up, and save myself the 30 minutes of going through the paints, which is why I have so many paints, I think. Yeah, that barrier to entry is the first one. So yeah, I think that's a cracking one. Trips, any other barriers, detractors, or things that have worked for you or not worked for you?
For me, it's a barrier to starting one. When I first started getting back into hobby, I was trying to have a dual purpose desk. So I have a work desk that was also my hobby desk. But that meant changing between one and the other, there was a set of exercises and detail to do. Having a dedicated hobby space where I sit down and the paintbrush is there, the miniatures are there. I might have to top up the water. I'll probably just use the scummy one from last time and go with it. It just reduces the get going feeling, and when that space gets messy and detailed, I will then end up going, oh, I want to do some painting and I want to do some hobby, and I will spend an hour re-optimizing the space as opposed to doing any actual painting.
I love that, and I think I think we'll start there. I think barrier to entry and things we can do differently, or things that help, is availability. Like, just that immediate like availability. Can I grab it? So Trips, you've got a dedicated hobby desk. I sort of do. Can I? Is this going to work? Oh, that's the wrong way. As we go that way in the studio, the window's in the way. But I've got my little airbrush desk there, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. Now, I don't often paint in the studio because I'm probably working, but there's kind of two times where I get to paint in my world. Obviously with Libby, like, I'm trying to find new ways of doing things. So there's 2 times I can paint. One is of an evening when Tiff is playing on the Steam Deck or whatever. I can paint then, or in between meetings. Like, I'm like, right, that meeting's been cancelled, I've got 15 minutes, I've no interest in starting the next project because I'm about to have to stop it to try and explain numbers to people again, so it's just not worth it. And availability for me is the number one thing. So having a little bit that you can grab. So for me, it works really well when I'm like, right, I can just grab this project plate, take it in the lounge. I can sit there and I can paint on the coffee table, or I can bring it over here to this desk and sit and paint while I watch a video on YouTube or something like that. Having that immediately ready to go, and I have a brilliant little hack for you, but if any of you guys want to weigh in on that while I find the thing I want to show off.
Yeah, I could just say, yeah, I agree. Like the dedicated space, and I think importantly, a clean space is really important. So like keeping it clean and tidy it really helps me. Like when you sit down in the morning or something, and you sit down for a session, everything's just a mess. I think it makes your head messy. I think there's probably a saying, isn't there, somewhere about having like a clean workspace. I remember seeing that before. Like clean workspace, clean mind. It's like, yeah, it really does, really does help.
So
and I think it's an important thing to do at the end of a hobby session is to leave the hobby session ready that you can start again, as opposed to I'll tidy that up later, because the later is going to be the next time you want to start. And it seems a really obvious thing, but if you can't find your paintbrushes to start painting with, you
can solve this for a tenner. So if you are listening and you are like, I don't have a dedicated space, you don't need a dedicated space. But the best thing I think you can get is a 5-pack of cake drum boards. Okay, you can get 12-inch square ones, and they are flipping perfect, because you can just have the paints you're using, your paintbrush, and the models you're painting on one cake board. And then if you've got multiple projects, you have a cake board for each. Sure, there's going to be paints you mix and stuff like that, but this is something that I have found so useful, because I can just go over there. I've got a dwarf team that I'm painting up on one cake board. I've got Skaven on another cake board. I've got some Space Marine bits on another cake board. And I'm like, right, I'll just grab that cake board. All the paints I'm using are right there. I might have a separate bit of wood or palette or something that I put down and actually paint the model on, but it's my project grab bag. And like when it comes to space, if you've got a Kallax unit or something like that, you can bung them in a Kallax unit. You can have you can just quickly make a little tray bit or something like that, or just put them in a drawer. Like that's been massive for me. And for the price of £10, you've got 5 little project boards. That's 4 projects and one you can mix on, because it works as like a slate. This has changed my hobby life, because I can just, like Tiff's like, oh, I don't really watch a film, I just want to play my game or read a book. And I'm like, sweet, I'll be right back. And I go and grab my dwarves, and I've got my paints that I was using last. And when it comes to the end of the day, I just go pick up this thing and I go put it on a shelf somewhere that's out of the way. Now, it only works if you're working with like 15 paints and 12 models. But you know what's good? Blood Bowl. That's about 15 paints and 12 models. So I love this, because you keep individual projects I'm going to call it the Thunderbird 2 theory, in that you've got your pod and it's ready to go. And that you guys might think I'm ridiculous, because it's like the ultimate POV hobby solution, but I think it's genius and it's working for me brilliantly.
Yeah, I was just saying, I was amazed that I was old enough to get the reference. But no, it's
everybody knows Thunderbirds.
That's awesome.
About
true. Would you say you've divided?
Do you know Micro Machines? Do you know Micro Machines? That's the question.
I had Micro Machines, man. Was that the ones that I had a big truck and then it folded out into like a city, and it looked like a garbage truck, I think, and then you lifted up.
Probably.
And it had like a big ramp thing. You send them down.
Just
had all sorts of stuff.
Little cars. The fact that Miniac didn't know what Micro Machines were.
Inside the big car, like a transformer. And then,
that's wicked. See, it's so good. That's such a good era. What absolute hooligan that man doesn't know what Micro Machines.
I actually also had I had some die-cast metal Robot Wars robots that were like Micro Machines as well. And like a big arena. That was I love those so much. Like a Hypno Disc, a Chaos 2. Yeah.
The original Beyblades.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Dragging us back to your hobby hack, Ben.
Back in the room.
I think a really important thing there is that we've got our own solutions for the same problem that work, and that is a massively important thing about hobby productivity, is that you have to find a solution that works for you. So Ben has a very dedicated painting setup and space where he spends a number of his hours during the day, and is gloriously sitting with them to the right of shot for those who are zoomed in. Ben, you've got your cake tray solution, which is ideal, because that's just right for you, because you want to be able to pick it up and take it wherever you want to paint. Stunning. For me, I've got a dedicated space which is close to my work desk, but it is slightly separate, and that is my space. That is where I go. So we've all solved the problem in our own way, and therefore that barrier is gone.
What that does tell
Ben's
you,
Ben's literally divided his hobby into cells,
yeah.
so he can just access each one.
Well, I was about to say, what you've got there is there is a collaboration of a problem. Like there is a problem that we've each identified, and like Trip said, we've each solved it in different ways. But I want to build on this, going to Ben, saying that for him, what works is having potentially one task, one project, one flow at a time. Trips. What's your take on that? What's your opinion on that for you? Not like, is Ben wrong? Let's tell him. But like, for you, is it a one project kind of flow or?
Yes, I'm very much in the one project and see it through, because if I start something else, then that one project will remain partly painted for all time and ever and a day. So I very much try one project, and I try and very much ring fence it to that. Now, that doesn't mean I might not print the next project out and put them on some shelves looking at me as an inspiration to do something. But I'm going to try and start and get through something before I get distracted, because I know once I get distracted, I will A, forget what I'm doing, B, and more importantly, I will lose the motivation for going back to it, because I will cat it, laser it, and I'll be like, "Ooh, what's the next new thing? What's the new? Not the thing I built 6 months ago and half painted 2 legs."
Oh, well, if it's six months ago, that's gone now. Just print another one. I have a slightly different take. I think that too many projects will your task friction will just really reduce your productivity to zero. If you've got 8 or 9 different things on the go, you've got none. All you've got is a busy head that's not going to get you anywhere. I think about 3 for me, 3 different kind of projects on the go. That's why my cakeboard solution is absolutely superb, is because sometimes I don't really feel like painting dwarfs. Like if I'm like, right, I've got to paint the dwarf team, I'm like, I don't know, not feeling that today. But having a couple of different things there means that I can be like, I'll often just ask Tiff in an evening, I'll be like, right, do I paint dwarfs or do I paint rat men? And she's like, which do you want to paint? And I'm like, I don't know, this is why I'm asking you. And she'll be like, paint the rat men. And I'll be like, okay, I will paint the rat men. And I'll grab the rat men cakeboard and I'll get on with it. So it's like, I find that actually having a couple of different ones is really beneficial to me, because if I was just working on one thing and I'm like, I don't really feel like painting more green today, like Ben said, never. This Ben, that Ben paints all things. I just probably wouldn't paint. So I like having a couple of different things, bearing in mind that like I've changed up how I'll do things. So I guess this kind of links to that, is instead of having one next project on my mind, I will have, what are the 3 things I'm going to do this month? 3 or 4 things. What videos do I want to do? What projects do I want to do? What do I want to have painted by the end of the month? And I'll prep those so that I can flick between them, just to kind of like make it a little bit tastier. Like I'm a big fan in like meal prep, but if you're on a diet and you prep your meals, by Thursday you are just so desperate for something different that you order pizza. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I find that the same with hobby. What are your guys' thoughts on having potentially a couple of different things on the go that are a little bit different to give you some variation, good or bad?
I think it's really subjective. Like people's brain and chemicals work in very different ways, and the thing that keeps people going is not the same things as others. Like some diets work for people, some don't. So that's why like meal prep sometimes works for people. I'm someone, I genuinely probably could eat the same thing every day for a month. In fact, I did once, and yeah, it would be kind of fine. That's why I think I have a similar approach to the hobby, where it's like I could paint the same model all day every day for 2 months, and it would be absolutely fine. I quite like the repetition, but yeah, I think some people, like you say, you need that palette cleanser, you need the refresher, you need a bit of motivation to do something new, and that novelty, it helps. But sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. Just got to find if it works for you or doesn't.
Trips has got his Monday Night Blood Bowl face on.
I think it's linked to the goal achievement as well, though. So it's interesting, Ben, when you say I've got 3 projects on the go, because you've already set the outcome goal for all of those. So you're like, actually, I'm achieving those goals and details. Ben's trying to get achievement. I'm going to get one thing done and achieve that goal, and then I'm going to do the next thing and work it through. I quite agree that a palette cleanse is quite useful at times of detail. I know from my point of view, if I start painting something else partway through, I will distract myself in detail. I mean, I know my biggest distraction is often when I'm airbrushing and I'm like, oh, I've got paint left. What else can I spray with this color?
That's such a
That's so
real
true.
thing. That's
Yeah.
such a real thing.
So there is that. I always generally have a bit of terrain or something out, and it's like, no, I could wash the paintbrush, or I could just spray that bit of terrain with this color.
Yeah, I had a gun full of white ink the other day, and I was like, what else should I zenithal? Like, well, I've got what am I zenithaling?
You spray the studio door, don't you?
I actually do. Yeah.
Looking kind of fun now.
Just to see if it's clear, you know, like.
Yeah.
Is this safe? No. It works a treat. But no, it's interesting. But I think you're right, Trips. I think having a kind of corralling your what else factor is probably another really big win there. Like, what's next? What's the next project? What's in your mind? Like, Blood Bowl is a really interesting one because like there are only 30 teams, but there's probably about 30,000 different teams. And the difference between a bog standard Games Workshop team that's painted green and brown and the bog standard Games Workshop team that's painted pink and orange could be massively different painting vibes and painting challenges. Like, I've done this before. I'm like looking at a team. I've got like 3 Skaven teams. One of them's painted orangey brown. One of them's the Never Bay Nightmares. One of them is probably on the sprue. I don't know, but like we're challenged in this one because it's not like for 40k because you have to pay an army, and an army is massive for 40k. Ben might know this, but like for Blood Bowl, it's like, well, I can just do another team. Like, I'll just have 2 teams with 2 different paint schemes because that's my creative angle. So I think, yeah, so that's something I'm doing differently, is like I'm setting myself up for the month and being like, right, what's on my card? I was like, what are the things I want to print and paint this month? So like back at the beginning of the month, I was like, right, 1-page rules. There's a giant beetle. Not going to worry about the rest of their stuff. HDF, their Imperial Guard, they've got a heavy tank coming out. Love a heavy tank. I'll print that and paint that, but I won't worry about the rest of the stuff. Highlands Minis have got some Skaven stuff, and Daka have got Skaven with guns. So naturally, I'm like, yeah, I'm printing all that crap. But what that's allowing me to do is ignore the stuff that's not on the pad. And that for me is massive because, you know, Trip said, oh, you print the next thing or move on to the next thing. Me kind of zoning in on being like, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to ignore everything else has been wonderful for me for this month. It's the 22nd, probably 2/3 of the way through a dwarf team. I've printed 100 Skaven. I've printed another big project. It's all fully printed. Half of it's primed and it's ready to go. I've done test paints and I'm like, okay, how have I achieved this? This is probably more than I achieved all of last year. And it's about switching off the noise. So whether you've got one project, like Ben is like, I'm going to do one, then I'm going to go on to the next, whether it's Trips, like I want this one thing ready to go at all times, like, or whether it's me being like, you know, just treat yourself to these 3 slices of pizza and don't worry about the rest of it. That's keeping me to a point where I'm like, okay, my stuff's on my trays, ready to go. I've got a couple of different options. These are the only things I'm focusing on this month. And that, I guess, is something I want to bring myself back to. Is I think we spoke about this before on a pod, like when it comes to hobby time, like I'll sit there of an evening. I have historically sat there of an evening, just been like, what are you going to do tonight? I was like, I don't really know. And then I'll spend like 2 hours scrolling through Mini Factory Library and being like, what do I want to print? What do I want to print? And I'm like, if I spent just half that time actually just going and painting, I would have done so much. And that's been my biggest unlock in January, is I know what I want to print, I know what I want to paint. So then I'm like, well, I don't have anything to print. So, and my stuff is ready to paint. So I've cut out the noise. There'll still be some evenings where I'm like, I can't be bothered tonight. Like, I'm just going to sit here and play a game or watch a show or something. That's cool. I'm choosing to do that instead of being just like having analysis paralysis. So those 2 things, availability for me and a way to shut out the distractions and noise, has worked really well for me. Now on distractions and noise, I feel like you 2 have been working on something the last couple of weeks that have that might be worth talking about.
Do you want me to, I'll take the lead on it because Trips can say more about this one. But yeah, it was one thing that he recommended on the penultimate Monday Night Blood Bowl that we just had, and it's the Pomodoro technique. And like anything that people give advice for, like we said diets earlier, this is very similar. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. But this one really clicked. And it is the general principle of it, and you can tailor it how you like, is I spend 25 minutes, I set a timer on my watch, 25 minutes, do some work, then 5 minutes, do anything else. So like that can be check your phone, it could be go down, I try and make it like I go down, I get like a cup of coffee, like top of my coffee, or like not every 25 minutes, but yeah.
It takes you more than 5 minutes to
down,
make a coffee.
Get a glass of water. Yeah. Just sort of move away just for 5 minutes, and then you come back, do 25 minutes, and you repeat that 4 times, and then you take 30 minutes to an hour, whatever, have an actual break. I do 30 minutes of like a longer break, and then just rinse and repeat throughout the day. And I've done that for nearly 2 weeks, and it's been crazy good for getting stuff done. Like even little things, like it's just, you have to be strict. So even small things like, there was something that was running through my mind, or I might be listening to like a podcast or something, and I want to go and check something, and I just say, I'll do that in the 5 minute break. I'll leave my phone where it is, and keep it out of reach. And then the 5 minute break comes, and I've forgotten entirely what it was I was meant to check, and that's fine. That's great actually, because I've just saved maybe 10 minutes of browsing and looking at related stuff, and it's just been really good. So I'll let Trips elaborate because I think he knows more about this.
I think you've described it really well. I have a little timer version that I have on my desk, and I use this for my work for like really must concentrate and stuff. And it is to avoid the distraction. So that's for me the time when I'll even turn off the email notifications, which we know are very good for distracting. Maybe not WhatsApp, because there's usually something fun going on in our group. But it's that ability to focus on things. And I find particularly when I'm hobbying, I will find it very easy to watch a film or watch a TV series or detail. But before I know it, I will find myself watching it as opposed to actually painting in detail.
Yeah.
So for me, I've switched to listening to music, which I can do, and I can use my hands, and my brain still is focusing on what I'm actually doing, as opposed to, I need to skip the intro and I need to start the next episode, and this looks interesting. I'll sit back for 10 minutes and just watch it. And it's amazing how much distraction time you allow yourself to do. I mean, we've all gone down the YouTube hole at some point and found ourselves in a very strange place and going, well, that was 2 hours that I'm never going to get back. And it is 2 hours you will never get back.
It's even little bits add up. Like even just like glancing up to look at it, but even 10 seconds. But if you're doing that every minute, that's like nearly a fifth of your time gone. It really does add up. Yeah.
And the other good way to do that technique is it's a way of getting going. If you're struggling with that getting going and you're like, I need to do this, but I don't know where to start, just start with like, I'll just do it for 5 minutes and see if I can not be distracted for 5 minutes. Often you find that 5 minutes becomes, well, I'll keep going because I've actually got going now, and I'll do that 25 minutes in detail. Or you might even find yourself running through the time, as opposed to, as you were saying, Ben, being distracted and thinking about what to do and all of the distractions to start off with. You're going, well, actually, I started with 5, I did 25. I would have done nothing before. I'm already on a massive hobby benefit because I've not diddled myself out of my own time.
Because generally speaking, it doesn't take a huge amount of time to get stuff done. It like, if you like,
no, it doesn't.
So giving your way to like just eat away at it, even if you net like an extra half an hour every couple of days, that's maybe a couple of hours a week you've net. Like you can get most of a team started. Normal people can. I don't know, like Ben's quality mileage may vary on this one, but like I can get most of a team started and base painted in a few different half an hour sessions. And then I'm like, okay, actually, it's not far off being done. And then I think very much like what Ben was saying earlier about like that reward of finishing something. When you get to the point where you're like, I'm close to the finish line, it mostly, doesn't always, sometimes it could be demotivating, but mostly you're like, oh, actually, I want to carry on painting. Like I've started. I want to finish these boots, or actually I can do the extra highlights. I can get that bit like closer to the line. I just wanted to talk about falling down a YouTube and podcast rabbit hole. Ben did get to tell Joe Rogan
Oh my God.
what what he thought of him the other day.
Yeah, I remember that came up. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
It did make me laugh. But yeah, sometimes friends can be distracting too. Like when Milton was like, "Hey, wouldn't it be fun to see Ben talking to Joe Rogan?"
But also
I wouldn't
that
mind it.
brings up another good point, which is use other people and friends to sort of almost hold you to account and detail. When you're doing something that's a very personal thing, it's difficult unless, as we all know, it's Friday night and the tournament starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, well, I've got everybody else holding me to account because I said I'd bring this team. But we've all got friends and detail. Share the pictures, share your work in progress, and go, I want to get this done by the end of the week in detail. You committing to something there, and that the power of that commitment's actually quite useful to help you get over that whole, oh, what should I do in detail? Oh no, I committed to do that. I want to take a picture. I want to share it. I want to finish it.
That is key, I think. Like that,
Yeah.
for that motivational bit, like check out this work in progress, check how well this is coming. You get that kind of like that little tick of achievement, like, oh, I'm on the right track, or it does really, really, really help. So we've got availability, we've got, I'm going to say, focus, distractions, that kind of stuff. Oh man, I actually had the next point laid up. Oh yes. So the other thing for me that I'm working on this year is having a library of skills, or when it comes to painting, having a library of colors that you know how to do. So one thing I found really difficult doing the hobby is like, I need to do an orange. Have I ever painted an orange before? Okay, well, I know it's going to take me a while to figure out how to paint an orange that I am happy with, or that's going to work for me. But I think the more you paint, the more you're like, oh no, I did this purple on this other project, so I know how to do purple now. Like, and I'm not saying that the way of doing purple is the same for everything, but you know what? If you take 3 different greens, they may not work together. Like, it's about finding a color palette that you're happy with.
I thought that was going to be a tip to painting purple. Just mix 3 different greens, and you're good to go.
Chuck in a brown and some white ink for Ben, and you're there. Yeah. No. No. One thing I've started doing is building up a library in my mind of, or it's probably better to record it, of recipes for colors that you're happy painting or that you've painted before. Because if you can go into a project and you're like, right, what are my 3 colors here? All right, green, yep, can do that. Black, brown, yep, can do that. Okay, pink, cool. Never really painted pink. I'm allowing myself not to be like, right, I'm going to paint this project and I'm going to add pink because I've never done pink before, but like, I'm going to do some hobby time to learn how to do a pink that I'm happy with, because that's going to stop that extra barrier. So I can be like, do you know what? I can do a pink here. I know how to do this, or I can do this before. So I'm learning techniques for like coming up with good colors, but also actual techniques. So like Ben's done a really good job of teaching me some stuff on how to do zenithal stuff with the airbrush so that I can get that down. I've done some YouTube stuff. Like that's one hobby skill that I'm working to unlocking, because I know that I can then take that and I can use that somewhere else without having to learn it. I'm like, oh, I can apply that skill here, and I can add this color that I did over on these models here. And you kind of build that up. And I don't know if that's how you work in your job, Ben, but like I don't have that library. Like I have paint something a color and chuck Agrax on it and GG's. Like, but now I'm trying to do it better. Feel like I'm having to build up a library of good color, good individual colors, like from scratch, and good technique from scratch. Whereas I think you've done so much. I wonder if when you go into a project and you're like, we're going to do these 3 colors, are you already like, yeah, I've done that color here, I've done that color? Have you got it in your mind like, I can do this because I've done it here?
Yeah, it's like you have the memory banks and you just sort of tap in, and then it's just the proficiency. It's increasing like your comfort and your knowledge of what it is, and it just comes with time. And fortunately, I have a lot of time to do it. But yeah, I actually have surprisingly few paints, but because I could kind of approximate most colors that would be common, or even some uncommon ones with the paints I have, because I've used them and I know how they work and how they'll look in the end. I don't feel I often need that much more. It's like, I mean, I can probably show, like, I've got like a hobby zone rack there.
Yeah, hardly any paints
That
there.
is pretty much all my paints. And yeah, there's a few more like in the drawers and stuff. But like that generally covers all of it. So it's like I don't. Yeah, it's there are a couple, but I keep. So the one things I keep is there is a set that Chimera do, which are just the pure pigment stuff.
Yeah.
And whenever something doesn't work, they are the fallback because you can make any color you want with those because they mix perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have seen that mentioned on a couple of airbrushing videos we're watching recently. But I think like my tip there or my angle there would be like know your paints, or like, because one thing I think is detracting from my hobby in the past is I've been like, I want to do a model that's got a yellow and a red paint scheme. I mean, I'll go shopping. I'll pop down to Intoyment. I'll be like, oh, I'll get some yellows and I'll get some reds. And then I've got to explore using those colours before I'm sort of happy using them. Where I probably, like, if you build up, like my point being, like, if you build up a way of like, I know how to use this or this orange structure because I've painted it before and these are the paints for it. I feel like I would spend less time going, I wonder what this slightly different yellow contrast is going to be like. Is it any better than the other contrast that I've already used 6 times? Just use the one you've used 6 times.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
guess less is more in that regard.
Yeah, and be comfortable mixing if you have to. I think that's the thing as well. Like, just because the paint you have doesn't quite look right, you can usually chuck in other stuff until it works.
I need to stop buying green
Sometimes.
paints as well. I have
You do have a lot.
I have 27 green paints.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's because you buy another one every time you like use it once.
Well, that's just from years of being in Games Workshop Citadel painter. I'm like, yeah, no, need to get black. Better get a white too, and a flesh, and probably a silver.
Yeah.
And bleach bone as well. Definitely going to need that.
Yeah, you want to buy that blue? Make sure you buy 2 other blues with it because you need to highlight it. And the white you have ain't going to cut it.
They go out of date quicker than like most food products. So yeah, that's my other flag. Any other flags on like stuff that's working for you guys, or you want to apply differently?
So for me, I find an important one is a similar thing, but around techniques. So I will easily progress that my painting is not at the professional level quite yet, and I'm still learning. And I think a really important thing for me is to not try and do too much on an individual project in detail, and try and learn one thing and go and learn whether I'm good at it, whether it works, how I like to use it, rather than go, I've tried 7 different things and I'm not really sure which worked on that one, because I'm not actually learning any techniques for the future or detail there. So, but just learning one thing, I'm trying it and working it through, and it doesn't always work. And it's okay, because I can just print another one and I'll try a different thing. But at least I know what I'm doing then, as opposed to, well, I tried all of those different techniques that I looked at, and this mini looks good, but I don't know
For why?
why.
Yeah, that's very, very, very fair. I agree with you on that one.
I think it's a big part of learning anything really, is sort of tolerating, not failure, but like maybe just, I guess the term is like ambiguity, something that just is unfamiliar and that you might not understand or know yet, and just tolerating like that, because eventually you'll pick it up.
And you can compensate that by trying to learn for learning's sake. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're lucky. We've got some lovely 3D printers that can print basically infinite models. So when it comes to doing a test scheme or being like, actually, how do I get this Zenithal thing doing? Like, I just printed a bunch of models and did it. Like, that may not work for everyone who doesn't have that, but I guarantee you got some spare linemen kicking around. So if you're like, right, I'm going to be painting my orc team, I want to have their Rams color scheme, so blue and yellow. You can go straight into the team if you know what you're doing, but if you don't know what you're doing, just grab a model and paint a shoulder pad yellow and another shoulder pad blue to the point where you're like, yeah, I think I like that, or I don't like that. Like, test models, I think, are something that I historically have never really bothered with, and that's probably why I get to a project and I'm like, yeah, okay, and move on. But Ben, I take it you're a big fan of test models?
I do value them a lot. Yeah, I don't use them if I know exactly what I'm going into.
Yep.
So it's like if it's something I've done a lot before because you've already had that test period, or there are some schemes where I'm like, No, I know that's fine. I know how to do that. Like you say with the paints, like it's let's say yellow and red, they're colors I paint all the time. I love painting them, and I know exactly how they'll look. So if it's that, I'll just jump into it. But no, I'd say 90% of things I do, I will do a test model. Yeah, because like you say, it's like some things can not work. Some things you might have that barrier, and when you've overcome that, you're like, yeah, I need to repaint that. You need to repaint it over 16 models. You just suddenly that's like
You just
significant
don't.
amount of time
You
that
just,
now have
you
to
just
dedicate
don't,
to just fixing a
unless,
mistake.
yeah, unless you got to pay the bills,
Yeah.
you just don't. That team just never gets
Yeah.
finished. Like, oh, I tried this thing with them and it didn't really work, so bye.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a hurdle. You want to minimize those.
Any other tips and tricks, guys, before we kind of wrap up for this one?
Not really.
I-
One thing I've been doing anyway, at least, is where Trips mentioned like me listening to music or podcasts or something instead of watching stuff. Massive. I would recommend that. Cut out all the movies and series that you watch. But something I've been doing is trying to do language learning as a way of doing it. So you just have immersion of just you play the language in the background and then you just sit there and listen to it, because I'm kind of into that at the moment. And
which,
yeah,
which
that's
language? Which language?
I
Which
don't know if it's
language?
been working yet.
Don't be
sorry?
say Spanish.
Oh no, I'm out myself as a filthy, disgusting weeaboo, but it's Japanese.
Oh, that's fine. That's cool.
Only because we're going there later in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just trying that. There's some good videos on it, but it's interesting. Don't watch them while hobbying though.
I managed to turn a little bit of a hobby win this morning. My 9 a.m. call was with someone I work quite closely with, and I was like, "Do we need to share the screens for this one, or can I take this mobile?" He was like, "Oh yeah, no, we're just going to talk through some stuff." I was like, "Wicked!" So I jumped on a call with him and I cleaned up my morning prints. So I just took it from the print shed. I was like, "All right, mate, I didn't get a chance to do this morning, so I figured while we're talking, I can just do this." And he was like, "What are you doing? This is really cool." And I was like, "Yeah, it is really cool." And then
It is cool.
we got our meeting done, and I got to clean up 2 print plates that are now sort of
That's
curing
awesome.
merrily. And I was like, hey, that's a 2 for 1. So I think your point of like finding something that adds to the experience is beneficial, whether it's a productivity win. So I got a 2 for 1 this morning. Ben learning another language while painting, that I would argue is a 2 for 1. But if you're painting because you're enjoying it and you're having a hobby night, like I would frequently paint while either watching like the Lord of the Rings, because I've seen it before and I know what happens, so I know when I can zone out, when I cannot, or when watching Red Zone, like that's perfect because I found that I wasn't distracted. You cannot paint while watching something that's gripping, like Breaking Bad or like The Expanse, because you're just going to be paint. It's going to be paint. Your paint's going to dry on your brush, and if you're buying Games Workshop brushes, that's another brush you got to bin. So yeah, that's really fair. Music is solid, but if you want to chill out and watch a movie and do painting, that's cool. You're relaxing.
Yeah,
you're
'cause
watching a movie and you're still getting some painting done.
It's a really big point. It's something I missed. I know when we talked about sort of burnout and productivity, when I did that on the Siege one, is like people commented on it where it's like, the attitude towards this is quite careerist. Like it's like, this is like a job and you need to get through your work day. It's not about that. It's about fun. Like everyone should be painting because it's fun. And if it's not fun for you, don't do it. Like that's the thing. Like just don't do it. You don't have to. You really don't.
Hey Ben to do
And yeah, true. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. Actually, I have conflict of interest there, but no, it is true. Like it should be about fun, and it's about enjoying it in the way you can. The only reason we comment on like the watching stuff in the background is because a lot of people enjoy that chill time of like they can catch up with stuff while watching, while painting. It's something to do because our minds are screwed over in this generation, and we have to be doing 17 things at the same time, or we're understimulated. So
around about the millennial base, we are time spoilt. As we've grown up, we've been absolutely spoilt for time and availability of everything. And this is something that hit Tiff and I really hard. Now we've got a child, and we had loads of talks about this because like actually we've been time spoilt growing up. We just kind of like, what do you want to do? You go do it. It's like, cool, I'll go do this. I'll go read this. I'll go build this. I'll go do this. And we are time spoilt as a generation, I think. And that leads to probably such a massive swath of people looking at how to build up productivity, because I think 2 for 1s are generally speaking the way to do it. But your point is very valid there, Ben. It's like we are talking about this, like how to get more done. And quite frankly, painting while watching TV with a significant other, you are going to get more painting done. And this is something that Tiff and I have historically done. Like, what do you want to watch? I don't know. What do you want to watch? I don't know. So do you know what we watch? Friends. And neither of us is really watching Friends. So we've done this thing now where it's like, is there something you want to watch? Because I'd love to watch something that you want to watch, But if there's nothing you want to watch and there's nothing I want to watch, let's not watch anything. Let's do something different. So we'll put on some chill lo-fi or something on the telly and she'll game or read or write and I'll paint or write or something. And it's like, actually, we're both doing something instead of waiting to figure out what to do, which I think is my personal bugbear, is that time apathy of like, don't know what to do, so I'm just going to spend this time I could be doing something thinking about what to do. And if you've ever had a relationship where you're like, what should we watch tonight, and now it's 11 o'clock, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
But I'll just to bounce over to you, Trips, is there anything else you wanted to add, Mr. Productivity?
So the only thing I would add to that is that it is a continual journey trying to become more productive and detailed. There are no instant wins that will work for everyone in detail, and even things that will work over time will become routine and details that need changing. So the classic one is, how many of us in the last 3 months have completely reorganized the spaces we work or sit in?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of us have done that.
I did it yesterday because I was stuck
And
with a
we've
work
probably
problem.
found a more productive version, but it's not the most productive version of it. So it is a continual journey in detail. And if you are finding that you're getting distracted or irritated by something, try something different. You might find it works. And if it does, well done.
And doing stuff is its own reward. So like I throw one YouTube channel was just like, your hobby productivity, just do something. Just go do something. Go paint boots. Just go do this. Get your pints. Do some tidying. Like that don't forget that that's enough of its own reward. Like, you did a thing. You didn't sit there and think about doing a thing. You did a thing. I tidied. I prepped. I built. I glued. Like, whatever. Oh, the only other hobby productivity tip I'd say is, man, I've been putting off building Games Workshop's plastic models for a while. Like, I have a bit of a hobby confession. The Chorfs and the Gnome team, I've not cut any off the sprue because I saw you guys build gnomes, and the Chorf team just landed like very late, didn't it? So I haven't built a Games Workshop plastic model for ages, and now I'm like, right, I've got to build my Spirers. That's on next month's pad, but like, I'd really rather paint anything. So maybe that's the other unlock, is find something that you want to do less than painting, because you'll choose painting instead.
That's a pretty good point, actually.
Yeah.
Well, at least I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. My dad is a master at this. I'll go around, he'll be like in the garden doing something. I'll be like, what are you doing? He's like, well, Mum asked me to finish the kitchen, so I'm doing the garden. It's like, okay, cool. I will go home now. Bye, Dad.
I think I'm more like that than I thought I was, actually. Thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
I did definitely reorganize and tidy the garage because I had to, like. Oh, I can't remember. I was like, Alison, asked me to, I think, I had to repair the ceiling in the kitchen. I was just like, oh yeah, but I'm busy that weekend emptying and tidying the garage.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to wrap up. If you've got some things in the video that you think work well for you or don't, or there's some stuff we haven't talked about, please do put them in the comments or talk to us in the Discord about it, because we got a good year. Like, I know we're only a few weeks in, but like, there's a lot we can achieve this year with just a little bit of focus. I think that's really cool. Anyway, Ben, Trips, thank you yet again for hanging out and talking some Blood Bowl stuff. It's always good fun.
Thank you. That was good fun.
Yeah, it's nice to just chat about stuff sometimes. But yes, we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy painting.
That's spooky.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a neon rope set of LEDs would be quite good around a couple of like.
You do need some fancy lights, Ben, in the setup.
I do.
So a wedding gift, should we get you one of like the halogen ones that just says brush tithe?
Yeah, we'll get one of those.
Ah, that would do.
These are nice. I don't know if Alison wants it. I can't actually change any of this. Hold on.
I'm enjoying the setup.
Thank you.
We're joined from Brush Tithe from a vampire movie from the 20s. Oh, you go.
Wait, it's locked in.
You
Why
go-
is it locked in?
Oh.
I've closed Logic Capture. I saw Nosferatu the other week, and it's just sort of rubbed off.
That's fine.
Yeah. There's a storm coming. Oh, it's arrived in BT World.
You can just roll it with this if you want. It might take me a while.
I'm not gonna lie. I have been recording this entire time. I figured we just put an off cut at the end, an out cut at the end on tech issues for podcasts. Maybe we should have brought this up when we did Purple Chests Bump.
Yeah.
I was saying to you guys earlier though, we're at episode 156. I need to change the bit. I need to change the bit. Good golly. That by the end of next year we should hit 200, which is outrageous. Can I delete that? Hobby productivity.
If a new release ever comes out, that number will go up quickly.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't put the stuff that's not the podcast as podcast numbers. So I think we've had well over 200 podcasts on Podbean, but I don't count them. I do hope that none of the things about hobby productivity is being prepared. Yeah, we've published 250 episodes and nearly 500,000 downloads on the podcast feed, so that's good.
Why is it like this? There are no settings. They're all grayed out now. This is like Ben's nightmare. This is me clicking stuff when it's everything was fine.
Yeah. Pick one of the things that you clicked before and put the
Everything is grayed now.
blue
I
on
can't.
button.
I'm clicking it all.
There's a thing to be said for test environments.
Yeah. There's a reset button. Does nothing.
It's not just Discord, is it? Is there a filter you can apply in Discord that's messed it up?
No. Oh wait. No, there was something I clicked. Hold on. I think I've got this. How was it? This?
I started watching the mini wargaming Matt's video on alternate activations. And it's all very sensible stuff, really. I was really hoping he'd slam on like OPR's alternating activation, but he's done a really good thing about like how straight up alternating activations don't work because everybody brings different amounts of troops and you've got to fluctuate for that. And he brought up D&D, which I thought was quite good. Like, you know, you've got the big bad boss, but the boss is one person, and then you've got 4 or 5 players who then all get to go before the boss goes, and how they brought in epic actions. And it's quite an interesting video essay. I don't think, I mean, I'm not one to talk, although I am aware and I'm working on it, but his editing is quite bland. But that's something I've been looking at, like for the talking head videos I do, is like having the shots be moving and having like a change of frame and stuff.
Well, a lot of that is even just every time you take a breath, putting a transition in and then having the camera zoom in and out. And
Hey, we've got coloured Ben again. You're as...
I did nothing. I clicked nothing. It just started working. Sorry, we're back. I'm not going to keep anything else.
All right, let's do the pod.